Don't you hate it when there's a new word or a word that's been introduced and you don't really know what it means, but everyone seems to be using it? I think the word neurodiversity or neurodivergent is one such example. What the hell does it actually mean? So what the hell is neurodiversity? It's one of those things, isn't it? We hear it all the time, but if we ever stop to actually think about the meaning behind it, and I thought it would be a really interesting thing to tackle because it's something that so many people don't get. So many people don't understand. They'll use the word. They have a rough idea of what it means, but when it really comes down to it, how far has that sunk in and what does it really affect? According to the Oxford Dictionary, and I'm going to read this verbatim, neurodiversity is the range of differences in individual brain function and behavioural traits, regarded as part of normal variation in the human population, used especially in the context of the autistic spectrum disorder. So that's the dictionary definition. What does that really mean? I think the first thing to cover is really what the root of the word is. You've got neurodiversity. Neuro being short for neurological, diversity being variations in the population. We talk a lot about diversity these days. It comes up in so many different conversations. We've got gender diversity, racial diversity, cultural diversity. We've got diversity in the way that we live our lives and our beliefs and our thoughts and everything else. And it's actually celebrated today. It's one of those things that, in the past has been a very touchy subject, but actually within the confines of modern society in the 2020s, diversity is something that's really embraced. We recognise the need for diversity in our world. We recognise the need for diversity within our ecosystems and stuff like that. You can't just have one animal. You've got to have a series of animals and plants and biological differences so that everything works together. Society is the same. We've made a lot of strides. We talked about it a lot on this channel before. We've made a lot of strides in how we view diversity, in that we're a much more open society to different cultures, different races, and recognising that everybody's human, we all bleed the same blood, and that's really, really important. And without that, the world would be an incredibly dull place. The difference is with neurodiversity, it's something that people don't really understand in the full measure. So understanding that it's a neurological difference, neurological diversity. So all of our brains are different. And this is the thing that really bugs me sometimes. We're all different. We're all individuals, unless you're, Life of Brian. We're all individual, not me. One of my favourite scenes in movie history. We all recognise the need to be individual. We know that we're individual, we're unique, we've got our own way of doing things, our own way of speaking, our own languages that we adopt, the phrases that we say, the way we perceive the world. Neurodiversity is really important. And we've talked before on this channel about the different, amazing human beings out there who've made such a difference in society. People like, I don't particularly like him, but Elon Musk, he's neurodivergent. You've got Bill Gates, he's neurodivergent. You've got, Jerry Seinfeld, Dan Aykroyd, so many different people, Tesla, Einstein. These people were all recognised as being neurodivergent, be that they're autistic or that they have ADHD or that they have other elements of neurological difference. Those things often work to make them brilliant. And the reason we've made so many strides as a community, as the world as a whole, is because these people see the world slightly differently. Their diverse brains help us in society to expand and build upon those important things. And basically understanding neurodiversity is understanding that the brain just processes the world around it slightly differently to the way that I do as a neurotypical person. My daughter, as an autistic person, her brain processes the world around her differently. That can lead to some challenges. It also leads to some amazing things. The fact that she's, pathologically demand avoidant, she's got PDA, the fact that she has that in her means that the word no means very little to her. If someone tells her she can't do something, her attitude is, well, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway and prove you wrong. That's going to see her far in life. It's incredibly frustrating as a parent when you want a room tidied or you wanted to eat her dinner or you wanted her to just stop making loud noises or whatever it is. When those things come along, it's incredibly frustrating. But the reality is that ability to ignore the naysayers and just plow on regardless is something that's going to see her far in life, and it's huge. Diversity is really important. Diversity in our minds is really important. There's a danger, and it's a danger that it's something that I think the world has always lived by, is that we see diversity as being a negative at first, especially when it comes to neurological diversity. Being autistic, we see it as a hindrance. And in many ways it can be. My daughter's anxiety, her lived experience is different from mine. But that's the key. It's different from mine. It's not necessarily worse. It's not necessarily better. It's different. My daughter sees the world in a very unique way to her, and it's different from the way I see the world. Those anxieties can be a real challenge, but the difference is that when she finds something she loves, she goes all in with it. We've talked about it before, the whole concept of hyperfocus, where when she's really passionate about something, the world can explode outside around her, and it's still something she will focus on. The key is different, not deficient. And I think that's something that we often miss in society. Just because something is different doesn't mean it's a deficit. It can be a real plus. Bill Gates is someone I really respect. He has that ability to see the world in a slightly different way. He built Microsoft out of nothing. And it was the ability to see the world in a slightly different way that allowed him to do that. Same with Einstein, this incredible mind. Nobody would debate the intelligence of Einstein, the immense IQ. But he had some what the world would consider sort of odd ways about him. The hair, the moustache, who am I to talk? But the reality is that, those differences in a way alienated him in many ways. He was told by his teachers early on that he wouldn't amount to anything. No, joke's on them, isn't it? But that's the reality. We see diversity as being deficient. It's not deficient, but it's often something we need to adapt to. The whole reason I started this channel was that I want to see the world start to adapt to neurodivergence rather than having to have neurodivergent people adapt to the world. If we're going to be inclusive, and that's another buzzword that's out there that we all talk about and no one really kind of gets, if we're going to be inclusive, that inclusive to me is where everybody sits on the same level, everybody has the same rights, the same respect. When we start treating people on an equal platform like that, we start to see the world ourselves in a very different way. No one is less than anybody else. That's the real meaning of inclusion. And when you bring in neurodiversity, and we want to look at a neurodiverse world where people of all neurotypes are accepted and celebrated, that's when we start to see change for the positive. So I guess the question that leads on to is, how can we do that? One way is in just everyday language. Now, this is a really tricky one. Obviously, I run my group on Facebook, and it's something that comes up a lot on that group. Somebody will say, my child has been diagnosed with autism. That's what we call person-first language. So my child, person, has autism condition, for want of a better way of describing it. Here we are talking about neurodiversity. Just the fact that we label it as a condition, as a disorder, as something other than a difference. What happens is people will put that, and a lot of people will jump on and say, we don't talk that way. And it's difficult because when you're initially introduced to the idea, when we first went through the process of getting my daughter diagnosed as being autistic, what happened was we get the paperwork, and the paperwork gives you a diagnosis of autism. And the medical model talks about having autism as the person first. Person, my child, has autism. When you actually start getting involved in the community, talking to autistic people, and that's something that I can't recommend highly enough. If you want to understand neurodivergence and you want to understand neurodiversity, go and talk to people who are neurodivergent, because there's no better source material than the actual people. I've got a long list of different actually autistic people that I've interviewed on this channel. And the reason I do that is because I can be a voice, but it's better to be an amplifier. Language is like that. If we want to embrace the community and make them feel better, what we realise is that most autistic people, and this is a key thing, it's most. The best thing you can always do is just ask someone how they like to be referred to. When an autistic person tends to refer to themselves, they say, I am autistic, not I have autism. So that's called identity first language. It's a fantastic meme I got sent long ago, which really explained this well. And it basically goes through a series of different things like, I have Norwegian, I have blind, I have gay. When you actually say those things in that way, you realise it doesn't sound right. People refer to themselves as being Norwegian. I'm Australian. I am Australian. Someone saying, I have blind. Of course not. You are blind. That's the way a person identifies. It's an identity-first language. That's the way most autistic people and neurodivergent people prefer to be referred to. That's the general consensus. But everybody will have their own individual ways of phrasing these things. The difficulty is understanding that as parents and carers, when we get that thing that says you have autism, we mimic that model. So what we're told initially is what we're going to adopt and what we're going to reflect back. That's why it's so important that we listen to the community. By the same token, it's so important if you're autistic yourself or you're neurodivergent yourself and you're watching this, have some patience with us because we are learning too. And for people like me, I want to be the best advocate for my daughter I can be. I want this world to be the best place it can be for her. I want her tomorrow to be better than today. And how do I do that? Lovingly correct me. I will always listen, and I will try and do everything I can to reflect that. I would do that for my daughter, but be patient with me. Correct me with some loving kindness and a loving correction that says, by the way, mate, we don't say this, we say that. It just makes all the difference. It's so much less confronting than when you're being attacked for saying something. So it's a huge thing. Both sides need to listen in this instant, is my personal opinion. So how do we embrace neurodiversity? How do we make a difference in this world for people who are neurodivergent? I think the reason that a lot of the time these things are slower with the neurodivergent world, or even the disabled world in general, it's that when we make adjustments to things like sexuality or understanding cultures and stuff like that, it doesn't cost us anything to do it. It's a change of mindset. It's being prepared to sit down, listen and go, oh, okay, I can make those changes in my own opinions, in my own brain, in my own life. When it comes to disability, that often comes with a price tag. Adapting a shop so that it is accessible for disabled people, putting in a ramp, putting in wider aisles and stuff, that costs. And that's where people balk at this stuff, especially when it comes to business and, even education and stuff like that. Making these adjustments costs money, and there's always going to be that accountant sitting behind the desk who's going, no, I'm not spending that. These things are so important, and if we want to have a better world moving forward, we need to start making these adaptations. But there are things that we can do for free that make a huge difference. Just having a bit of understanding. You ever been in the shopping centre, Tesco's or something like that, and you see a kid kicking off, and you kind of... I've done it myself. Before I had neurodivergent kids, I was sadly guilty of this, and I hold my hands up to that. And I think one of the best things that has been the journey I've been on in getting involved in this community is completely reassessing my own values and what I consider. And I think I've in the past been a very judgmental person, and the first thing I do, terrible parents, all that kind of stuff. What a nasty kid. Oh, that kid's awful, isn't it? You think those things, and I catch myself in that now. If I'm thinking that, and I've got a great example because I was in a car park about a year ago now, and there was a car parked opposite us. The family had gone in to get to some shopping, and I was just sitting in the car, and there was this poor woman sitting in the front seat, and it was chaos in the car. I think there were 4 or 5 kids in there. They were throwing stuff. There was noise. The car was rocking because that was just how much movement was going on. And you could see these, the veins in her head throbbing and the resignation in her face. She was absolutely broken, and it was really obvious to me when, reading that body language where she was at. Suddenly one of the doors flew open, and this kid comes running across the car park at Tesco. Cars coming, could have been hit. Ran past my car, and in the end I let the lady go and get her kid and bring her back. I didn't interfere. What I did was, this isn't something I would not have done in the past, but I really felt it. Having my own neurodivergent family, I suddenly had an empathy there that I probably wouldn't have had before. And I actually got up, I just tapped up and said, "You're doing an amazing job. You're doing fantastic. I know it's really challenging." And I said, "I'm guessing you've got some neurodivergent kids. Just, you're not alone." And I just gave her some reassuring words. I tried to do it in a really nice way, not in a patronising way. She was like, really, really thankful. It was one of those moments that really affected me and changed me as a person in a way, because I saw the difference those kind words made. That bit of empathy, that bit of understanding about where she was at and the stuff that she was going through was just hard. And when you're going through that and you've got people tutting under their breath, people walking by looking at the cart, they make faces. Something we can do that really helps when you see that. Don't judge. There's enough judgment in this world. Leave it for the judges. Why can't we be non-judgmental? Start thinking beyond what we see on the surface. The old adage, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, don't judge a family by a moment that you're seeing. Don't judge a moment by their child's challenging behaviours at that point. You don't know what's gone on before. You don't know what's going on at home. You don't know what's going on in their minds. If we can adopt that much more caring and understanding, empathetic, non-judgmental attitude, it makes such a difference. We can bring that into workplaces. We can bring that into schools. If you've got somebody who just behaves slightly differently to us in the way, but it's not harming anyone. What is the problem? We've talked about stimming on this channel before. Autistic people, neurodivergent people often stim. Now, the thing with stimming is we all stim. I stim. I actually jiggle my legs a lot. It drives my wife insane. She hates it. People stim in all sorts of ways. If you've ever gone and you're having a bad day, I just need some retail therapy. I'm going out and I'm going to buy myself a new pair of shoes or something like that. It's a form of stimming. You're regulating your emotions and your anxiety by doing something physical or that allows you to release. If you go to the gym because you're stressed, it's a form of stimming. If you're going for a run, it's a form of stimming. If you're hopping on a video game because it's just a way of blocking out the world and having some downtime, that's stimming. Listening to music, for me, I escape to a whole other world. It's a form of stimming. With neurodivergent people, stimming is often a lot more obvious. You'll see handshaking, you'll see head nodding. People might try and get some sensory feedback, hitting themselves lightly. There's so many different ways that we stim. People stim through verbal things. Somebody I know who stims verbally, they just hum. They hum. And you get this thing, and it's a bit disconcerting at first. It's like, well, what's he doing? And I realised quickly, it's just a stim. He's probably not even aware he's doing it. It's a really cool thing. It's not harming anyone. But we can be so judgmental with these things, and so people become afraid to do it. So you get this thing called masking. And it's something that the person will do without even realising they're embarrassed by what their needs are. And so they'll try and hide it. They'll repress it until they can get into where they consider it to be a safe place. So how do we make the world a safe place? And that's what we should be thinking. It's not how can we get them to their safe place, but how can we make this moment right now, this place, safe for them? Not being judgmental, not picking up on it, not treating them any differently because of it. Just that's inclusion again. That's what it is. It's everyone's on the equal platform. And if we're doing that, people just have, neurodivergent people especially, will have a much better time in the world because they're not constantly feeling judged and criticised for it. There are so many simple things we can do to make this world inclusive for neurodivergent people. We need neurodiversity. We need a world that embraces all kinds of thought, all kinds of approaches, cultures, races, sexes, whatever. We need a world that is balanced. Neurodiversity is key to that. And we wouldn't have most of the major advances we made in science and technology without autistic and neurodivergent people doing what they do best, which is just seeing the world in that slightly different way. It's all about acceptance. Thanks for joining me. Please do go hit like, hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll always know when I've got new content coming on. Please do chuck in a comment if there's anything that you've experienced that you'd like to share. I would love to hear it. Also, if you've got any tips or things that I haven't mentioned here or examples, please put them in the comments. It makes such a difference and people are able to read them and see other people's perspectives. I will see you again on the next episode. In the meantime, please do stay safe.